So windows are a big part of homeowner projects, right? You guys maybe be finishing a bedroom, finishing a basement, maybe you're finishing an attic area, and you're going to swap some windows out. And I just want to make sure that you have clear understanding on egress windows and what are those requirements. For this video, I'm going to focus just on below grade, and then we'll hop into like above grade egress window requirements as well. I will show you the code, and then we'll kind of just dive into a diagram that I have on egress windows and the particulars, because as an inspector, when I'm out there, egress windows they can just catch you because there's like little nuances that maybe you just didn't know about, and you're like, I paid to have my concrete cut to put in this egress window. I didn't realize I needed a header above it, or outside in the window I needed to make sure my rock was down, or the sill heights, and so on and so forth. So I want to make sure I cover those particulars, so if you're putting in an egress window, that you know where you need it and what is required to make sure it's done properly. So I'm going to hop right into the code book, and again I'm just going to focus kind of on below grade egress windows, and then I'll do another video on above grade videos, so kind of will tailor to whatever it is you're working on. So we'll hop over here to code reference. So they call an egress window an emergency escape and rescue opening. I think most people know it as an egress window, right? Egress windows are required in basements, habitable attics, and all sleeping rooms. So for this particular video, I'm talking about basements and then sleeping rooms as well. So if you're finishing your basement, you're remodeling it, maybe it's just one big open space that's a rec area, you'd probably want to have at least one egress window down in that basement, or a door. A door would suffice as well. Maybe you got an exterior door that goes up some stairs, takes you out. That would cover that requirement. But for a window, if you got a couple bedrooms, then you need one in each bedroom to make sure that you're covered for your egress windows. So right here it does say basements, habitable attics, and every sleeping room shall have not less than one operable emergency escape and rescue opening. Where basements contain one or more sleeping room, an emergency escape and rescue opening shall be required in each sleeping room. And then obviously those egress windows need to take you out. They can't lock you into a gate or something. You got to get to a public way or something like that. The only real exceptions to the code is if that particular basement is just a mechanical room of some sort. Maybe your furnace is in there, your hot water tank is down there, and it's just down there for maintenance. Code also dives into a little bit on exceptions if you have a sprinkler system. But being that most homeowners that are doing their own home projects, they probably don't have a sprinkler system in their house. If you do and you have questions on it, you can shoot me an email and I can try to research and answer for you. So as far as windows are concerned, egress windows in a basement, I'm going to hop over to let's see, I got a picture here I want to show. This is a below grade diagram for an egress window. And it kind of gives you all the little code requirements that are required as part of an egress window. So let's start with, you're going to cut the opening, right? So you're going to cut in, maybe you already have an opening, but maybe you have to cut into the concrete. And you want to make sure that you cut it correctly so that you have the proper heights and room to do your framing. So the biggest thing to think about, the big number to know, is 44 inches. So from your floor to your sill height, you can't be over 44 inches. And that's right here. Max finished sill height, 44 inches to the bottom of the opening. So this says bottom of opening, but the code requirement actually says sill, which it kind of says sill right here. So sill height is that actual height where you would drywall or put a wood sill in, right? If the inspector shows up, he's going to measure from the floor, which could be your carpet, vinyl flooring, whatever it is you have, to that top of that sill. And as long as you're 44 or less, you're good to go. I always try to cover myself, and I go to actual opening. That way I know I'm covered. When my window's in and I open that slider or crank open the casement window, I know that from that opening to the floor is 44. I know I'm good. So that would cover, that's the minimum that you have to cut if you're cutting into your concrete foundation. But you also have to take into account the framing aspect of it as well, right? So you need to make sure you're an extra 3 inches minimum on the outside so that you can put in treated lumber on the sides. And then the bottom would have an extra 1.5 inches. And then the top, you have to take into account a header up there. Depending on which way your floor joists run and your roof runs, you may be able to get away without a header, but I just always recommend to put one in. It just covers you every time. If you can just plan for 2 or 3 2x6s minimum, you know, if you're just doing a standard window that's no more than say 3 or 4 feet wide, you know, I always tell guys to get as much as you can in there. So if it's like a 6-inch foundation wall, you usually can fit like 3 2x6s in there. I tell guys to get as much as you can in there. And it just, without getting into the weeds on if it's required or not, I would just always put one in. So if you're 5.5 inches for a 2x6, you're going to add another 1.5 inches on the bottom. Well, that's going to put you at what, 7 inches. So you're going to want to go extra 3 inches to cover the sides and an extra 7 inches to cover the bottom and the top minimum, right? Maybe you want a bigger header in there, or maybe you've talked to your building inspector and they'll allow 2x4s. Maybe you can fit like 4 2x4s in there, right? To make this nice big old packed header in there. Or, you know, maybe your roof, it's a gable end, right? So your house is like this and the window is right down here. So they call this like a gable end. And you don't have any roof load on it because the roof's, all the snow loads coming off of these side walls. And your floor joists run perpendicular, or they run, I got to get my words right here. They don't bear on top of that window. They run the opposite direction. So then you don't really have a lot of load right there, right? There's not a lot of weight coming down. You don't have roof load on it. You don't have floor load on it. And you've got what they call a rim board that kind of carries across the top of the foundation. You don't necessarily need a header in there. So you could get away with deleting it, but I'm always cautious to tell people to delete it, because if they just don't know for sure, put one in. 2, 3, 4 2x6s, you know, nailed together, sitting on top of your treated is not a bad idea no matter what, because it's there. You also got wood in there for any type of window hangings or anything like that, so you know you're covered. But just keep that in mind. That is a huge one. And as an inspector, that is like one thing that we need to see all the time. We need to know which way do the joists run for the floor, where does the roof go, and what type of load is over this window that has been created. And I've had homeowners come to me and they say, well, I just took an existing window and I just cut down. It's like, okay, well, that's an existing situation above there, and sometimes depending on who your inspector is, they may let it go. Say, okay, you took an existing window that's, say, 3 feet wide, you just cut it down, you put a casement window in there, everything above that's existing, you didn't mess with it, you didn't touch it, you're probably okay to leave it as is. Definitely document it. The inspector normally wants to see all the framing before it gets covered, but I've had instances where people have accidentally covered it up and we can't see it. And it's like, well, do you have a good solid picture so we know exactly what's up there? And if they don't, then it's like, well, we kind of have to open it up. We got to know that it's structurally sound. We don't want all that weight on your window and then cracking your window or anything weird happening. So when it comes to that kind of the first part, right, you're going to cut open your opening. You're going to make sure you have enough room to case it, get a header up there, and you got 44 inches. So then you're going to hop to the outside and you're going to end up putting in a window well. So that window well is going to come along with the same height requirements, that 44 inches. So if you're above 44 inches, you have to put a ladder in. And I always suggest for safety purposes to put one in anyways. But as far as the requirement is concerned, when you're all done, if you stick a tape down there onto the gravel or whatever it is you put in the bottom of it, if it's over 44 inches right here, then you need to put a ladder in. So 44 inches is just kind of your main number. But you also have to take into account, well, okay, I put this header in, which made me drop my window down. So maybe my window inside is only like 36 inches, which is awesome. But then on the outside, it's deeper. And then you need to make sure that your gravel is 6 inches below your window, because you don't want any snow buildup or rain buildup, or I don't know, maybe you've got clayish type soil. It takes a long time for that water to drain, you don't want it draining right back through your window. So you want to make sure at least 6 inches below, well, it's actually below wood, right? So that 1.5 inches of wood that's below the bottom, you actually want to be 6 inches below that. But as an inspector, it's, do the best you can, right? Let's try to get 6 inches, get your gravel all set in there. If you need to, put some drainage rock in the bottom of it. That way you have a good solid drainage base that's sitting in that window well. So that kind of would cover you on your window itself. Now your window well, usually if you're going to a box store and you're just buying a window well, it'll meet the code requirements, but code actually is 9 square feet. You want to have 9 square feet right in here worth of opening to be able to open the window all the way and to be able to get out. So keep that in mind when you're buying your window well, because if it's just a little casement window and you're just looking for the smallest window well you can find, make sure you've got at least 3 feet by 3 feet. That'll give you your 9 square feet minimum. So let's talk about the actual window itself. Which window should you buy? Should you buy a single hung, a sliding window, a casement window? Well, I technically don't have a preference. I like casement windows, especially in a retrofit or remodel situation, because the window can be smaller because the entire thing opens. So you need to make sure that you have what they call the openable area of 5.7 square feet, which is right here. Minimum openable area of 5.7 square feet. And then the minimum width, it says right there, is 20 inches. And the minimum height is 24 inches. So 24-inch clear minimum right here, 24-inch or 20-inch clear width. But in order to meet 5.7, which is your minimum openable area, one of those has to be bigger, right? So you can be 20 by 3 feet or 24 by 2.5 or whatever that number it takes to get to 5.7 square feet. You want to make sure that you've covered that 5.7. That's why I like to stick with a casement, because it's the whole thing. You don't have to get too much into the weeds on measurements. Usually you don't see a single hung in a basement. Usually it's a sliding openable window like that, or a casement window. Either way, as long as you meet that requirement, we're not going to have any concerns about it. You meet 5.7, you meet the minimum widths and heights, you're good to go. So that just kind of covers the basis of an egress window install in a basement. When you get up to attics, there's a couple little differences that you got to think about. Mostly the same, but I'll do that on a separate video. I want to make sure that this will cover those requirements for a basement egress window. As far as, so 5.7, minimum 20, 24, 44-inch sill, 44 inches at the window well, or put a ladder in if it's over that. And then make sure that your grade outside is dropped down. Make sure you got room for your header up above, and that you call for that inspection, or well document the exact size, how it's bearing, and all that, depending on how you're doing your permits, if you're getting them or if they're required or whatever. Just make sure you document what you put in there for structural purposes. Okay, so that kind of covers it on egress windows in a basement. So hopefully that helps you out, and we'll keep moving.